Hello, please meet today's guest, Kendrick Wong. How is it different than, other kinds of animations, cartoons, those sorts of things?
So it's based upon the frame rate. So basically, let's say in Western animation, let's go into things like pixel, for example. You have basically like 24 frames per second. So you have 24 different moving images, or it can go up to the 36 even, or some 48. So every action looks very fluid. So let's say a hand movement. If you're moving your hand up and down, for example, it looks very fluid like this. But anime, the frames is only 12 frames per second. So your hand frames, let's say here, 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 here. It keeps changing, and you can't. And because it's 12 frames per second, your eyes have to fill in the gaps themselves. So that's the main difference between the anime and animation. That's the storyline, the plots, those kind of things. The design style is based upon the frames per second.
What happens when you read manga every day for 30 years, then decide to disrupt a $25 billion industry dominated by Japanese conglomerates? Today's guest has done exactly that, building the first foreign-owned anime production fund and gaining insider access to one of the world's most closed entertainment ecosystems. From Malaysia to Singapore to twice-monthly flights to Tokyo, Kendrick discovered that anime has hit a massive inflection point. For the first time in history, global anime revenue now exceeds Japanese domestic sales. We're talking about a market that just crossed 25 billion and shows no signs of slowing down. You'll hear how he convinced legendary anime veterans to back his vision, why he chose a 100% ownership model over traditional investment approaches, and the fascinating cultural bridges he's building between Eastern storytelling and Western distribution strategies. But this isn't just about anime. It's about recognizing when niche subcultures are about to explode into mainstream markets, the power of authentic passion and business, and why sometimes the best funding strategy isn't about needing money, but about needing the right partnerships. I'm Jothy Rosenberg, and this is Designing Successful Startups. Well, hello, Kendrick, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate this.
I always start with this, which is, context setting. Could you tell us where you're originally from and where do you call home now?
So I'm originally from KL, from Malaysia, but I call Singapore home at this point in time. I travel to Tokyo twice a month for the past maybe 18 months so far. So I'm not really sure where my home is at this point in time, given that I'm always in between cities and countries.
And in fact, right now, this moment, you're sitting in Chicago, you told me.
Yeah, I am. I'm just here for a quick conference. And then after just meeting a few people, have a few meetings, and then I'll be flying off by tomorrow night. It's literally just a very quick trip.
So for those of us that don't jump on a plane and fly for 18 hours routinely like you do, what is your secret for getting through such a long flight?
It was easier when I was younger. It's getting harder as you age. The only thing that helps me now is that I like to take day flights because I tend to work on the flights. Night flights or red eyes are very rough for me because I'm neither here nor there. I just pop a melatonin and it helps you sleep as well. But I try to prioritize day flights as much as possible just so I can get there fresh. And I tend to then change my sleep cycles depending upon where I'm going. So if I know that it's morning their time, then I would just I'll stay awake. If I know it's night, I'll just force myself to sleep. Just so I don't get jet lag. That's a main killer for me.
Your focus, the market that you're in, is the anime industry.
That's correct.
And you've been in that industry, but you built some companies, and I hope you'll tell us about that in a second. But you're also an investor now, and you're investing, and you've created a fund. So why don't you start by telling us how you got into this industry, the anime industry?
So the anime industry is, I've been reading manga. So anime comes from manga. And I've been reading manga since I was 8 years old every single day, even to today's date. It's one of the only things that keeps me is my place of relaxation. So when I read a manga, I just feel relaxed. The storylines are interesting. And that naturally progressed into more anime as I started getting a bit older. So when I was 8, was manga all the way. When I was 15, I started becoming anime all the way. Now it's more of a mixture of both. So when my previous style, it didn't work out. And when it didn't work out, I got quite burnt out. And during that burnout period, I just wanted to like find a way to center myself again. And I found out that the centering point of that was going back into manga and anime. So one of my first trips, or my first holidays in like 13 years was to Tokyo. And my only mission in Tokyo was to figure out how to enter the anime industry, because I just simply wanted to be part of this industry that I really enjoyed. And at that point in time, I realized how closed off the industry was as well, which was an interesting challenge to solve. And I'm very like problem solution oriented. And the more I started understanding around the industry, the more I got like I fell in love with it. So that's how I ended up over here.
Was there something about the, the jerky? I mean, that's not the right word, I'm sure, but the jerky motion that that they wanted, as opposed to the Western style of large numbers of frames per second?
Because a lack of money. So when anime started, Japan was going through like a recession, and the cost of paper was quite high, and everything used to be hand drawn. So to save for the cost of paper, they did 12 sheets per second. So it was more of a necessity than anything else, and it stayed that way until now. So because people started liking it and their staff got very used to it, I mean, they saw no reason to change it. But a lot of craft and artwork from Japan starts out with necessity and then becomes an art form.
Okay, that's very
Interesting, yes.
this fund that you have now. That's not the first thing you did in the industry. So what was the first thing did you start your own anime company? What was that first step?
So the first step was that I simply wanted to enter the anime industry, and I found that I wanted to invest into anime IPs, because I figured that one of the best ways for me to showcase like my love for the industry is to help contribute to its growth. So I went around like the anime industry in Japan, and I started talking to a lot of the animators, the studios, the IP owners, the publishers, basically like the entire like food chain. And I started getting to know a lot of them better, and I made a couple of investment offers, as well as I did a couple of investments in the end. So all of those came out of like my personal pocket at that point in time. And then I formalized it into a company in the beginning of 2024. And the reason why I did that was because I just realized 2 points in particular. The first thing was that the anime industry focuses a lot within Japan, and they market and monetize heavily within Japan, despite how big the global anime industry was. So that was the first interesting point to me. The second point to me was that the anime industry is a historically seen as a niche subculture, but you find that 1 in 3 Gen Zs watch anime at this point in time, and they consume it religiously. So anime has moved away from like a niche subculture into more mainstream, but it's very hard to see this unless you're part of the Gen Z ecosystem at this point in time, or you've actually seen the growth with the conventions. So one easy example is that in LA, there's a convention called LA Expo. It's the biggest anime expo in the world. You just go there for 1 day, 2 days, and you just get immersed in the crowd. You see the thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that are just flying around from all across the world just to attend the event. So that's basically how big anime is getting towards. But most of the time, or most of the investors, they see it as a very niche subculture. So I thought I want to change the perception of anime as well.
This fund, is it at all like a traditional, venture capital fund? Have you gone out and found limited partners that are your backers? What is the structure that you've come up with?
It's a very similar structure to like a typical fund, VC fund. We have LPs that will back the fund, but it's a content production fund compared to a venture investment fund. So what we do is that we invest into anime IPs, and then the proceeds of the fund is then distributed towards the limited partners. So the main way that we monetize the fund is through the distribution of the IP, whether that is content distribution or whether that is, let's say, secondary revenue distribution, such as licensing the gaming rights, merchandising rights, and the like of those. So it's more of an atypical fund targeted towards a different kind of like risk profile compared to venture capital funds, as well as a different type of like group of investors. Because historically, and even today, access to like investing to anime IPs is almost impossible for any foreigners in the world. It's a very largely Japanese-owned conglomerate investment vehicle.
Your fund is more like a Hollywood movie production company, right? Isn't it? Because they have to come up with the money. They get the IP produced, and then they start making money when it's distributed. Isn't it similar like that?
It's somewhat similar. So I've actually like invested in a couple of Hollywood production funds. It wasn't typically to my liking for two reasons. The first reason is that you have to be the first window of investment for you to make money. If you're a second window in the Hollywood, you tend to lose money. And the second reason is that most of the money that comes from these are very largely the box office revenue. And rarely does it go into more secondary revenue streams, which again, it would be the merchandising, the gaming rights, the music rights. I mean, it goes on in quite a bit. But those is the parts that's more interesting to me. How do we monetize that particular part of the IP? How do we grow that? So that's the main difference between the production fund for anime as well as Hollywood IPs.
And the name of your fund is Kasagi Labo. Is that right?
Yes, correct. So Kasagi
is
Labo
the
is the name of the company as well as the fund. Kasagi, when you look towards like you look in Japan, the Kasagi basically means a bridge, and Labo is labs. So it's meant to represent the bridge between the East and the West. Because a lot of our approach to like anime investments comes more the Hollywood style. Like we want to market the IP like 18 months ahead of schedule compared to typically 3 months ahead of the release. But we want to also appreciate like the Eastern culture, the Japanese culture, because it's very important that when you enter into a new industry as well as a new country, you do so by respecting the culture that you're entering into.
Has the Japanese industry accepted you, or are they treating you like an outsider?
Interestingly, they've accepted us. It took a couple of months to get it done, like maybe, I don't know, 6 months, 9 months. But we very largely see as an insider at this point in time. We're invited to a lot of other investment deals to sit at the table to represent the global interest side. It's actually been a very enjoyable experience for us. So one of our advisors is a guy, he's called Masa Maruyama. He's a extremely like gentleman figure. He founded a studio called MAPPA, which is one of the biggest anime studios in Japan. So someone like him, basically like has been supporting us like since the inception of the company. It's like once we explain our vision to them, it's the ones that start believing in us, started like going to their friends, explain to their friends what we're trying to achieve as well. And that has been extremely helpful for our growth.
Hi there. I hope you're enjoying the show. In addition to the podcast, you might also be interested in the online program I have created for startup founders called Who Says You Can't Startup? In it, I've tried to capture everything I've learned in the course of founding and running 9 startups over 37 years with no constraints like there were with my book, Tech Startup Toolkit. The program is 4 courses, each one about 15 video lessons, plus over 30 high-value downloadable resources. Each course individually is only $375. The QR code will take you where you can learn more. Now, back to the podcast. So there are other funds that all invest in anime. How is yours? What's the fundamental difference that yours has, besides the fact that you're not just focused on Japan? You're really broadening the market.
So at the moment, in the market, there's no existing like, anime production fund. The only ones that would typically exist would be like entirely Japanese owned or owned by the banks in Japan. But it's also a bit harder for them to gain traction. And the reason why is that their distribution model is very different from our distribution model. So they try to go off to maybe like invest into 10-20% of the production committees, which creates an anime. But our production fund wants to own 100% of the IP, which means that we take 100% of the production committee system within the anime investments, and we decide the success or failure of the IP, and we heavily market the IP to ensure they're successful as well.
So in the anime industry, are there the equivalent of stars? I mean, and it would, are they the artists? Are they writers? Are they writing the scripts? Who is sort of the other than the funder, the money, what type of person is the leader in terms of the creativity behind anime?
So interestingly on this as well, is less on the individual and more of the company that represents this interest. So in the anime industry, it starts with manga, right? And in manga, you have a publisher who publishes the manga. So it's like Penguin Books in the US, for example. And this publisher has a lot of control within the industry. So very largely, they are the ones that decides the success or failure of something. Now the writer is very valuable as well, but they're less like hit writers or mangakas compared to like the publishers. So the publishers are the deal makers. They're the wheelers and dealers over there. You work with the right publisher, you can be successful. Now, the challenge in this same component, right, is that if you think about it from the perspective of the West, where you have the stars and the stars dictate whether you get any viewership or not. In this case, it's the voice actors that plays into it, it's a studio that works on it, and then eventually it's the marketing that's done behind it as well.
So you've entered this Japanese originated industry. Do you speak Japanese?
I wish I'm learning in the moment. So I understand Japanese, but I don't speak Japanese. But it's helpful enough for me to like understand what everyone is saying in the meeting. But my replies are a bit poor at this point in time.
Is there another language like English that you can use as an intermediary? Do a lot of the people that you're talking with speak English or not?
Enchant. So I typically I have 50 members that are fluent in both English and Japanese. So they help translate everything within the meeting itself. So every single meeting, I always bring a translator with me. But the CEO of my Japan office is an industry veteran in for the anime industry as well, and he speaks fluent English and Japanese. So he is also a huge part to why we're successful. His name is Tony Izumi.
That's super helpful. So, is there a market for this in Europe as well? And I guess you're working on expanding into the U.S. So, where else besides the U.S. will you be going? Is it Europe or not?
So Europe is one of the markets we want to go after, Latam as well as India. So basically hyper social markets that has a huge demand for anime. Have you heard of cosplay before? Cosplay is basically like you're cosplaying as a character. So you're dressing up as a character within either, the Western side is like, let's say you can dress up as Sonic the Hedgehog. That's the East as well. But let's say in the West, you can do like Deadpool, for example. Or let's say you dress up as Deadpool. So that's cosplay. Cosplay is huge in anime culture. If you go to anime conventions, you'll find that maybe like 5% of the guests does cosplay. Now, cosplay originated from France, not from Japan. Because if you think about it, the French, the fashion scene there is very strong, right? Which is how cosplay originated from. So, just to say that Europe is massive for anime, so is Latam as well as India. So those are the markets we're going after outside the US.
Has everything in your building up this fund, has everything gone smoothly, or have you had to, something bad happens and then you have to sort of work around it? Have there been those kinds of big challenges?
Not yet. But I think that the reason I say not yet is because I think that every time you do any form of business, there's always a challenge you don't anticipate that rears its ugly head once you're like you least expect it. So today, the answer is no. Tomorrow, I'm not so sure. But there's nothing that we've anticipated most of the possible challenges already, and we haven't encountered anything yet. But I'm just like always like I'm always hopeful, but also like doubtful, and I'm always like thinking about what could occur.
And when you first got started, you were able to self-fund. You used your own money.
Yes.
And had you been in business before that, where you were able to, generate some returns so that you had the money to go do this?
Yeah, I had a couple of like non-startup traditional businesses before, and those like perform extremely well. You can think of it as like trading before Alibaba was around, those kind of things. like physical goods trading, but I also did private equity as well as like digital trading. So those were like very largely successful for me. And those were how I gained the profits to be able to like invest into anime IPs and other things directly. So my entire idea was actually to not go down the route of like raising external capital, was to initially fund everything myself. But the reason why we moved away from that is because of partnerships. We found that for us to win more and more deals in Japan, we had to showcase who the partners were. So it's very important for us to like work with distribution partners or find people who can help us with distribution of the IPs that we then like invest into, for us to be able to even win the IPs over. So that's the reason why we started raising external capital for this.
What types of companies are these LPs mostly?
So they fit into two types of groups typically. The first one is like maybe less strategic, but very strong interest as well as ability for us to raise follow-on capital. Those are more the family offices. So typically it's the second generation that has access to their family office at that point in time. And they grew up reading manga, watching anime, same like me. Then the second group of people are the conglomerates. These actually largely exist in Japan. So that one, the portfolio approach, they're investing into anime IPs. So instead of investing directly to the IPs, they want to invest into a number of IPs. So they found that the portfolio approach with us is a better bet for them. Given that, IP is the same as a venture capital, is like you're looking for the hit. So something that can return 100x over.
Like, what is the size of the market today for anime?
The market size at the moment, 25 billion USD, is huge.
Okay, so what percent of that is still Japan?
Japan is 40% at this point in time. 60% is overseas already. That's the reason why that's the reason why the animation is focusing outside Japan at this point in time. It was 2022 or 2023 that was the first time ever that global sales outpaced Japanese sales. And that was a huge like news to the anime industry because that showcased like global demand. But if we trace back towards it, right, the reason why this ended up happening was also during COVID. During COVID, you couldn't produce live actions, right? Because you're all restricted. So what ended up happening was that you can still produce anime, given that you can produce anime from your home. So anime was still being released, and live actions already had a huge decrease in productions. And then you had the writer's strike after that in Hollywood. So this means that the shows that were readily available was anime, and that became people's choice.
Where do you think this will go? Because you just described 2022, major change, and here we are just 3 years later. How big do you think the market will be, and where will be the fastest growth areas, say in 5 years?
So let's look towards other like initially niche subcultures that eventually hit mainstream and how quickly it grew. You can see it from, let's say, the sneaker market. You can see it from K-pop. Once the inflection point happened, the growth rates of subcultures goes exponentially fast because it moves from being something that you're shy to talk about to something that you want to talk about. So that's the same pace for anime. I'm quite sure it hit maybe around $50-60 billion in the next 5 years. It really will go through an accelerated pace of growth because it has hit the inflection point for it to grow already.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Doubling in 5 years.
Yeah. There's a hope, there's a dream. But I'm very sure it's realistic as well for that.
What advice would you give for founders in general? Because you've had a pretty amazing path. You made an interesting decision, and it wasn't based on the fact that you needed the money, but you needed the partnerships to sort of attract more people. Well, what would you say to founders about whether they should really try hard to bootstrap or raise some money from venture capital so they can grow faster?
I think something really strongly depends upon like what is your expected outcome that you want to achieve. So when you bootstrap, the entire decision-making process belongs to you and the timeline belongs to you. But once you take external capital, there's a cost of the capital as well. And you have a responsibility to capital towards the investors who have invested into your company. So because of that, there's expected return. So unless the company that you have has an exponential possibility of doing 100x from where you are today, for the seed round at least, then it doesn't make sense for you to take venture capital. You're better off like going after a typical bootstrapping model or going after a loan. 99% of companies actually should go after that model and not go after the VC model. VC model is actually very high growth, high stress, and you're looking for very outsized outcomes to achieve.
Well, in my case, so I'm still working on my 9th startup, and
Yeah.
it's a hardware-based startup. So the capital requirements are quite large.
So how do you raise the round? What was your story that you told?
Well, what I told was that this was an enormous market because it's a cybersecurity hardware play, and it gets cybersecurity right in the chip. No one else was doing that. And the need is really extreme because, right now the bad guys are starting to figure out how to make cyber attacks that hurt people or kill people.
Yeah.
And so they're getting more and more dangerous, and really need to be stopped. And you can't stop them with software-based cybersecurity because what they're doing is attacking software that has bugs in it.
Yeah.
All software has bugs in it.
Of course.
So,
Amazing.
so tell me something, and this is going to be sort of my closing question. You have clearly, and so do a lot of founders. I mean, most founders have grit, by which I mean resilience and drive and just able to withstand, any of the bumps along the way, and able to withstand 18-hour flights. What is your source of grit? Where did it come from for you?
It was my grandfather. He was an entrepreneur. He came from nothing. He made something for himself. And the way he did it was that he simply he had perseverance. He tried a lot of things failed. And his entire philosophy in life is that if you don't try something, you never know whether it's going to work or not. So he also said that, he always told me that hard work always pays off, but you just think about where you want to spend your time as well. So it was really my grandfather that actually got me to this, to become who I am today.
Oh, that's great. And what sort of things was he ultimately successful building?
He built one of the largest car company in Malaysia. So he became very successful for that. And that's always a learning that I took away from it as well. Because he did something in the industry whereby it was very difficult. And building a car company is a bit challenging. So a lot of times when I go through tough times, I always think about what he went through. So then I realized that a lot of things I do is very minuscule compared to the amount of challenges he had for himself.
Is that company still in existence?
Yes, it's still in existence. It's doing extremely well at the moment. My grandma has passed away, but his company lives on.
Wow, that's great. Sorry that he's passed away, but that's a great story.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Do you have any other last words for people that might be watching or listening to this podcast episode?
Yeah, if you want to make money, startups is the worst way to do it. It's the worst chance of success, but it's the most enjoyable thing you can ever do.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Appreciate this. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Before we wrap up, here's your founder toolkit from Kendrick's journey. First, recognize inflection points in subcultures moving mainstream. Kendrick saw that 1 in 3 Gen Z watches anime religiously, but most investors still see it as a niche. Look for markets where consumption patterns have shifted, but perception hasn't caught up. That's where massive opportunities hide. Second, respect the culture you're entering, especially in international markets. Kendrick spent months learning Japanese business customs and brought on local industry veterans as partners. Don't try to disrupt by bulldozing. Success comes from bridging cultures, not replacing them. Third, consider strategic fundraising beyond pure capital needs. Kendrick could self-fund, but raised external capital specifically for partnerships and deal access. Sometimes the value of investors isn't their money, it's their relationships and credibility in your target market. That's your toolkit. Now go find your inflection point. That's our show with Kendrick. The show notes contain useful resources and links. Please follow and rate us at podchaser.com/designing successful startups. Also, please share and like us on your social media channels. This is Jothy Rosenberg saying, TTFN, ta-ta for now.